Hello, everybody. Welcome to the new episode of Piano Star Masterclass. I'm your host, Brian Lin. The Piano Star Masterclass is a 30-minute interview with a guest teacher, followed by an hour of masterclass performed by two students. During the live stream, you can ask us any questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them. You can also sign up to be a performer for these masterclasses and get a chance to perform for a live audience. Today's guest teacher, Michael Lewin, is one of America's most prominent concert pianists, actively performing in over 30 countries. His career was launched with victories in the Liszt International Competition, the American Pianist Association Award, and the William Capell International Piano Competition. His numerous recordings have won a Grammy Award and a Round Glass Music Award. He is professor and head of piano at the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley and director of classical music for Ethos Music in China. He gives masterclasses worldwide and has taught many prize-winning pianists. He is a Juilliard School graduate and a Steinway artist. To learn more, visit his website at www.michaellewin.com. So now, without further ado, let's welcome Michael.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Michael. Good evening. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. Nice to be with you.
Great. And you're holding up okay during this quarantine?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Great. So I'm so happy and I'm so honored to have invited you to be a guest here. So our topic today is how to get into a top conservatory, and we have a lot to unpack. So why don't we just get right into it, right?
Okay.
So first of all, my first question to you is, as a young pianist, how does one know what school to apply to, or which kind of school to apply to? How does one make that choice for themselves?
Well, part of it depends on, I would start it all by saying knowing yourself. I mean, what kind of career do you envision? How advanced are you? Do you want a very competitive environment or a more nurturing environment? Do you want to be on the East Coast or the West Coast? Do you want a conservatory, a university? I mean, there are so many possibilities for a young pianist. But I think if you look at yourself realistically and see where you are, then you can start to figure out what are a good group of schools for you to apply to.
Understood. So, what kind of people do you think is what kind of, let's put it this way, what factors should one consider, do you think, when they choose, how do you choose, you mentioned small or large, right? So you
Right.
want to know, which cities, are there any other kinds of things that one should consider when they think about applying?
In terms of which school to apply for?
Yeah, so what kind of school? Like when they do the research, because you mentioned doing research, right?
Right, definitely.
What kind of specifically what kind of research can they do?
Well, I mean, you can learn a lot about schools, and also you have the option to even visit schools. There are even companies that will take you around and tour schools. I mean, there's a feeling sometimes when you walk into a place that it feels right for you. It feels like home. I mean, if you're looking to go to, one of the big name conservatories, then realistically, you should be already advanced. I mean, you should play well. You should be open to being in an environment where everyone else is good, where the teachers are going to have very high expectations, where you're going to be asked to perform a lot, and you should want to perform a lot. Some people, when they're going for an undergraduate, they're not at that point yet, let's say. They want to be in a more not so competitive environment, let's say, and maybe they'll grow into something different over 4 years.
Right. I totally agree with that. I think it's such important years of your life, your college years and your masters, even for master years, and it's important to choose the kind of environment. I think a lot of people don't put enough emphasis on, and I liked what you said about taking a tour at the schools. I think that's very, I think that's not something that people really think about when they do music schools. My next
Also,
question,
I think that there are some schools. I mean, I would say that there are some schools that may not be as famous as another school, but maybe have a wonderful teacher and a wonderful program, and you may, in some ways, get more from that as an undergraduate, more attention. So fame shouldn't necessarily be the only criteria when you're considering music school.
That's very,
And
very
actually,
true.
I would say, honestly, for me, even maybe more important than the school is the teacher. For me, the teacher is almost everything. And there are great teachers in many places, some of whom are not maybe in a very visible situation or whatever, but over the years have just churned out wonderful students, and they're wonderful people and musicians and take care of their kids, and even with the most famous teachers, it's all about the fit. I mean, one great teacher can be not the right person for somebody else, or vice versa, in terms of the personality or the way that they work, or maybe they're traveling too much, or there's so many things. So the teacher is so important. I mean, for me, equal to, if not more important than the school.
Another point that I totally 100% agree with you on. I think,
and teachers are very easy to research. I mean, we're all, pretty visible figures. I mean, you can watch us play and hear us teach and go to festivals with us and watch interviews on your wonderful series and all these things, and get a sense of that person, talk to their students, I mean, well, prominent teachers all have prominent students usually, or at least, the students, and you can talk to them and they'll tell you, maybe, sometimes they hate their teacher, sometimes they just love their teacher more than life itself. I mean, it should, so. Yeah.
Yes, speaking about, the relationship with teachers, I think I've heard stories where, people who really don't like their teachers and having to switch teachers, and that you don't want that to happen. I think that doing research beforehand would really help. And just speaking from my own experience, I've had upwards of 7, 8 teachers throughout my life, and I think some of them I still keep in touch with and have grown to almost fatherly, motherly figure for me. So I think that speaks to how important. I don't know if you remember, are some of the most important people in your life your teachers as well?
Absolutely. And teachers, they give in different ways. I mean, some are more formal, some will embrace you like family. Maybe the most important teacher to me maybe was never let me in 100% personally. He was all about the music, but he gave me everything about the music. There were ones that, this is all different, and, I mean, you want to avoid disasters if you can, and as far as what you say about switching teachers, I mean, I feel strongly that if it's not working out with a teacher, that you should switch, and that even if the teacher is upset, I mean, this is your life. You're spending a lot of money to study, and you should have, a wonderful teacher, feel like you love your teacher and they're giving you everything you need. And if they're not, for whatever reason, and all schools will allow that to happen. It can be very awkward, but I think it's important,
Right. And some teachers are very open-minded about that. And of course, some people, like you said, might hold grudges, but you have to do what they do.
Yeah, you have to do what's best for yourself. I mean, this is your career and your life and your studies.
Very, very true. So going back to our topic of applying to schools. So when you do apply to these conservatories, how many schools do you think?
I think maybe normal would be, say, 4 to 6 schools. something like that, unless you know where you're going and you know you're going to be accepted, you know who you're going to study with, it's all a done deal, you know. But in general, it's good to have options, you know. Maybe you'll get more scholarships at one and another, and that's important to you, or you'll like the environment more, or you can get to the teacher you want at one school. So I think it's good to maybe, you know, up to a half a dozen. After that, it gets a little confusing, you know.
Definitely.
At least four normally for most people, I would say.
You know, and I wish I knew that when I was applying for college, for undergrad. I applied to, I think, if I remember correctly, 12 schools.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And it was because of a lack of awareness, I would say. I didn't know, really, I didn't know how I measured up against people.
Right.
I was afraid that I would not get into any schools, really. So,
Right.
and it turned out that I got into most, and then I realized, you know, I if I were to do it again, I wouldn't have done that.
Right.
I would have
I mean,
definitely
sometimes students are shocked. They're shocked that they get in, or they're shocked that they don't get in, you know, because they, as you say, they just haven't had that. I mean, I grew up in New York. I was in the Juilliard pre-college, and so I pretty much knew I was going to Juilliard. It wasn't. I didn't take many auditions. I took 2 auditions, you know, and I mean, but that's an unusual background. I mean, people are coming from all over the world, and yeah. Well, I'm glad that you found how well you measure up.
Right. Well, I'm just the only thing I remember is traveling to all 12 places, and that was a real pain.
Yeah.
But
It also costs a fortune to run, you know, the airplanes and the hotels and making all the
100%.
arrangements. Oh, it's nerve-wracking. You know?
Yes. So would you say that I mean I would say that if I had gone to more, you know, music festivals and
Right.
when I was in high school, I think that would have given me a better
That's a
idea.
very important thing to do. If you can, you know, have contact with other students and teachers and play for them, it helps you to get a sense, especially if you're coming from a foreign country or you live in a small city, you know, that's very important. And you learn a lot and you have fun, you know.
Right, right. So for those, I get a lot of people ask me this following question. They ask me, you know, what do you need to apply to a conservatory? Do you need SAT scores? Do you need, you know, you won't believe the number of questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
do you want to just quickly clarify,
Sure.
you know, what is important and what do you need
Sure.
to apply?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think that universities maybe factor in academic performance in high school more because they tend to be a little bit more academic in general. But a conservatory is really, you know, a glorified trade school. I mean, it's, you know, you're there to study music and to perform and, you know, and so, I mean, from the piano faculty standpoint, we don't really care. As long as you graduated from high school, we don't care what your grades were. I mean, we like it, of course, if you're smart, you know, but that's not important to us. I mean, you need to really be worrying about preparing your audition program. I mean, that's the crux of the matter in terms of acceptance to schools. Sometimes admissions offices may get involved with scholarship things or all sorts of other things, and they want to make sure, like, if you're an international student, you need to make sure that you get the TOEFL score that you need. That's very important. Yeah, so I mean, most schools require a Baroque piece, including a fugue. So it's usually a prelude and fugue, a classical sonata, you know, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, a romantic work, decent size, and if it's a graduate degree, you know, big piece, and a 20th or 21st century piece, a contemporary piece, and an etude. I think Juilliard is the only school that requires 2 etudes. I'm not sure.
I believe so. Yes.
Maybe Curtis. I'm not sure, but generally it's those 5 pieces, and that's what you need to prepare. And the choosing of that repertoire and the way you play that repertoire is, you know, 90% of acceptance.
Right. That's what I tell people too. That the audition is almost the most important thing.
It is totally the most important thing. I mean, if somebody has, you know, if TOEFL requirement is 85 and yours is 50, then maybe we can't get you into the school because admissions is going to get involved, you know, or if you didn't get a high school degree, it's, you know, these kinds of things. But basically for a normal student, it's all the audition, all the audition.
Gotcha. And as far as recommendation letters and resumes, do they play any parts in, you know, do they influence the audition results at all a little bit?
You know, I not really. I mean, you know, I can speak for myself or my school, but I mean, I read those letters, and I like it when somebody really obviously thinks that the student is talented and has done well, and they're proud of them and they like them, and you know, that means something to me. When it's a colleague that I know, of course, it has a lot of weight. Although letters, you know, aren't always. You know, all of us write a lot of letters, and sometimes, you know, we can easily see when somebody is writing something and what's really in between the lines, you know. But if somebody is a student of even a close friend of mine and they play a horrible audition, I'll talk to that friend and I'll say, listen, you know, I'm really sorry, you know, I mean, he just played a horrible audition. I mean, you know, and that's, you can't really say anything, you know, I mean, you know, but of course I want students to do well who are study with friends of mine. I mean,
right. Of course. Right. Speaking of horrible auditions, let's talk about how to avoid them. Okay. So, in terms of, go ahead.
So I mean, you know, you need to be prepared. You know, you need to be prepared by December 1st. Almost all schools. Applications are due, and most of the top schools now require a pre-screen video. And the pre-screen video is not your entire program, but maybe 3 pieces, representative pieces. It could be a movement of a Beethoven and, you know, an etude and your Baroque or whatever it is, you know, but just to get an idea. And actually, at the top schools, there's a pretty sizable cut at that point because, you know, it's complicated and expensive to get all the faculty together to listen to people. And if somebody is obviously indefinitely not going to be accepted, it's doing everybody a favor, including the student, if they're not accepted, although, I mean, they may not see it that way. But so by December 1st, you need to have some of your pieces in good shape. And so normally, let's say, well, like last year, we had approximately 200 pre-screen applicants, and I cut it to about 100. So right off the bat, there's like a 50% cut. And I think that's not abnormal for schools. But if somebody is like borderline or whatever, I'll pass them because it's only December and they have a chance to play and maybe the circumstances weren't good or whatever. I mean, you know, just ones who obviously are just, you know, it's not going to be right, you know. So you need to choose your repertoire very well, very wisely. I mean, this is super important. You know, if you're going to play a super difficult etude, you know, if you want to play Fufele, you better be able to play it. You know, otherwise it's not going to impress anybody if you sit down with a really, just a terrifically difficult piece and you can't play it. That doesn't help you. It's better to play something that you can play, you know. You know, the contemporary piece is something that a lot of students don't give enough thought to, I think, because actually more and more that matters to us. And if you play a piece of Debussy from 1901 and you just got past the 20th century part, but we're in 2020, you know, there's been 120 years of music. And, you know, a musician nowadays needs to play contemporary music. I mean, you can't just play Chopin your whole life, you know, it's not going to work anymore. We're in a new world, you know? And so some curiosity about repertoire, especially that, but it's hard to know. I mean, like I was telling students a couple of years ago, oh, play Beethoven Opus 31, number 1. Nobody plays that piece. It's a great piece, you know. This year at auditions, like dozens of them, one after the other, are playing Opus 31, number 1. They just go in cycles. You can't predict it, you know. But I mean, I don't think it's a good idea to play only the most popular pieces for everything, you know. You want to pick a balanced program that shows you well, you know, and that's important, and be prepared, you know. The audition itself, usually in most schools, I would say it's rather short. It's, you know, maximum 15 minutes. sometimes 12 minutes. And that seems so short. I mean, you spend so much time working and you fly somewhere and you play and you have so many hopes, and and you see I'm getting 13 minutes to play an audition and you think that's unfair. But actually, usually within 2 minutes, we have a pretty good idea. I mean, our minds can be changed, but so that means that what you play first on your audition program is super important. And some students think, oh, they have to go chronologically. They should play Bach first, But actually, the only thing that most schools will give you a choice of is the first piece. What would you like to play first? And you should play what you are most comfortable with, what you feel you've performed the most, is most solid. You're going to be a little nervous and jittery, and you're adjusting to a new piano, So that's really important, because normally for most schools, we're going to hear parts of every piece. But it may not be the part that you think they're going to hear, and so this is why your program needs to be prepared, all of your program. Don't think they're not going to hear the fourth movement of your Beethoven sonata. Very often at my school, we very often hear just the fugue of the Bach, because the Bach is on there for us to see your ability to play contrapuntal music. And so that's really what we hear. Not always, and if they start with the Bach, we'll let them play usually the whole thing, but, you can expect to be jumped around. So you need to be poised and you need to be prepared. And you need to understand that you're auditioning to be a student at this school. You're not auditioning to be a professor at this school. You're not auditioning, to make your recording debut. You're a student, I mean, we want you to be a great student, but that means that, sure, maybe something is overpedaled. Maybe you miss a few notes. Maybe you have a teeny memory slip in something, whatever. Don't get thrown when you play. If you play a good audition, little things will be forgiven, We want to see that you're musical. We want to see that you love music, that you have something to say in the music. And I think you need to give a lot of thought to your sound quality. And this is true also for, when I judge international competitions and I talk to, other judges, and I say to them, like, what's the most important thing to you in this competition for this pianist? And they'll all say the sound. Everybody says that, the sound. Because the sound is everything. When you hear 50, 100 pianists playing on the same piano in the same room, then everybody's sound is different, and if your sound is ugly, it's not nice. If you make a beautiful sound and you have sense of stylistic awareness, and you're listening, we see you listening, that matters so much,
Understand. Wow, that was very, very. A lot of great information, even for me, and a lot again. Some of the things that I wish I knew
If you think of the greatest pianists, your favorite pianists, almost all of them have an identifiable sound, because the sound is our DNA. It's our method of speech and communication, and it's so. I mean, in a sense, playing the piano is a lifelong quest to work with sound.
Right. So often, I think in our early stages of piano study, students rush through things too quickly, and they just want to play more and more and more pieces without really,
Right.
And then they play so many pieces mediocre, in a mediocre way, right? Instead of
also a lot of boys especially, but let's say you get to about 16 and all of a sudden, like, you're starting to become a virtuoso, and you're playing big pieces and you've got great octaves and you can play loud and fast, and you start banging, and it's very often there's like a year or two in there. It was true for me. I mean, I think my sound for about a year was just horrible, I mean, I was just like, I was showing off, and like all of a sudden I could play everything. And I was just, and I had a teacher who just like, that's it for that sound. Like that is it. It's like, you make a nice sound. I don't care how loud you play, how fast. If it's not a good sound, you just get out of here. It's like, and that was like, whoa, but that was really important for me. And I think some kids, they have no idea how they sound. I guess recording yourself is a good idea,
Right. So that's when we really, talk about the details of sound, that's a whole nother topic, I think.
Yeah, that's everything.
But that's definitely important. So I just want to get a little more specific on the audition. So during an audition, right, you're playing, and as you said, before, you played 2 minutes, the judges already have a pretty good idea. So does that mean that what does that mean really? So when you, let's say you're playing and then you're cut early, or if you're playing longer than usual, does that mean anything at all? Like
well, I think when sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but when you're on stage, you cannot think about that. That's what you just have to be prepared to play anything. I mean, if they say play it backwards, it's like, fine, okay, whatever. I mean, you just have to be prepared. You can't know what they're thinking, so you just have to keep your cool, keep your poise, and just, if you're not happy with something, just try to make the next thing better. If you are surprised that they stopped you suddenly and you thought you'd play longer, worry about it after the audition. Just don't show anything on your face. If they ask for the third movement of Beethoven Sonata and you thought, there's no way they're going to hear the scherzo of this Beethoven, and do not make a face like, oh, like, that's, we're like, we don't like that, just keep a straight face. We'll know soon enough if you're not prepared with it, but I mean, just try to play beautifully. I mean, I think it's something, that I wish people had told me, and I wish I could have believed it, but we want to like you. Every professor listening to entrance auditions, every judge at an international competition, we want to love you. There's nothing more beautiful and exciting to me than to hear a great talent. I'm sitting there just waiting to fall in love with your playing. That's my starting point. I want to love you. I want you to be great. I want you to be somebody that I want to really to work with and to have. And I want to reward. And so instead of thinking of us as executioners, you should think of us as people who really are positively disposed towards you.
Gotcha. And what if the judges talk to you? Does that mean anything?
Well, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes judges will talk to not judges. I mean,
no, the jury panel. Yeah.
Sometimes it's because of English. Sometimes we think that a student maybe doesn't understand anything that we're saying to them, and so we maybe ask them a question or something, because just to see if, because it can be very difficult for the student and the school if that's a big problem. It's less important to us as teachers, but it's important also because we need to communicate with you. I sometimes no, I mean, very usually there's not that much talking, but when they do, usually it's actually sort of positive. Like if I say to somebody for the last piece of an audition, what movement of Carnival would you like to play? Or what's your, I remember last year I said to somebody, I thought this girl was great. I loved her. I said, she was playing the Schumann Humoresque. I said, what's your favorite movement? And she said, first movement. I said, please play that movement. That's positive when somebody is being nice to you. I mean, usually everybody's nice to you. I mean, if the faculty isn't nice to you at auditions, that's not a good sign for the school, I think, either. I mean, there's no reason not to be nice.
Right. And it's a
You know.
sign. It's a good telling sign for the student too, right?
Yes,
To
right.
consider things.
Right, right,
Right.
right. But you don't always know what people are thinking. Maybe you look at the faculty over and they're making a face. Well, maybe they have an upset stomach. It doesn't mean they don't like you. You just have to try to just like a racehorse, keep your blinders on and just do your best and don't get thrown. And if something doesn't go the way you want, it doesn't mean you're eliminated. Just try to make everything else good.
That's very important, I think, for our prospective applicants to know. I'd just like to share a quick story of mine. When I was applying to a pretty selective music festival, I had a memory slip. I completely stopped in the middle, but I just apologized and I restarted. And then in the end, I still got in. So I think people sometimes get too hung up on, right? Am I correct in that?
Well,
right.
yes, you're correct. I mean, I'm sure you're a terrific pianist. I mean, I would say that in general, it's a very bad idea to stop.
Of course.
I mean,
yes. I'm not encouraging people to stop. For
memory
sure.
slips are part of our life.
Right.
I mean, if you get through a concert without a memory slip, it's a miracle. But you don't see a professional pianist on stage stopping. You'll see them improvising. You'll see them jump up and down and this and that and whatever.
That's actually what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
I mean, actually, honestly, as a professional pianist, when I see somebody recover well from a memory slip and then play well after that, I like that a lot because that's what life is going to be like. Some kids, they have a memory slip and they just fall apart and everything else from then on is a disaster. Well,
right.
you have to try to forgive yourself at the moment. Later, you can beat yourself up.
Yes, totally. Okay.